All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this week's episode of Fantasy Fumble. It's your boy MJG with the Birdman. Birdman, how you doing
What's
today,
going
brother?
on? What's going on, Manny, man? I'm just like I said, I'm just happy that it's football season. We got some good matchups to talk about today, and a few other things that we're just wrapping up before the actual season begins.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. The season kicks off this Thursday, which actually is today because we're recording this and we're streaming this here for you Thursday. Every Thursday from now on is going to be our Fantasy Fumble. We want you to be prepared for the weekend, right? Especially if that's a matchup you want to look out for. And that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about who's hot, key matchups, who's not, matchups to avoid. And of course, we're going to do a little draft recap on our personal drafts and just some things that we identified while we were drafting in our 12-man league. So hopefully it gives you a little bit of insight here.
Welcome back, everybody. Manny, who you got for your hot matchup this week?
All right, boys and girls, I know you've been waiting for this one here, but my hot matchup of the week is the dreaded Thursday night game. Yes, I said it. Please don't cancel me. All right, the Thursday night game. All right, the Chiefs versus the Lions is two of the most prolific offenses in NFL, and they're coming out the gates to start the season off. I know most people are afraid of Thursday night games because typically throughout the season it is a bad matchup because it's a short practice week. But everybody, coming out of this, everybody's well rested. It's the off season. This is the first game of the season. Everybody has to get those jitters out. And I don't know, historically, these games tend to have a little bit higher scoring on opening day. They tend to be pretty high scoring, especially when it's the Chiefs. I don't know if you remember a few years back when they won the bowl before this year. They led off the season as well, starting off a Thursday night game, and Mahomes just took off where he left off. So I
Oh
think
yeah,
that overall it's going to be a great matchup. A lot of studs playing in that game. If you have Kelsey, he's injured. I'm worried about him, but Mahomes is going to go off. We're going to figure out who the main guys will be in that passing offense for the Chiefs, who the main running backs are going to be. So that's kind of a toss up. But we already know who the main guys are going to be on the Lions. It's going to be Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown, but I honestly think that it will be a high scoring affair. I mean, Vegas does have the game here. Not that I bet or anything like that, but Vegas does have the game here at like the highest point spread of the week of 52 points. So I mean, it's going to be a really high scoring game. And then obviously it's going to, at the end of the day, you're just trying to go where all the points are at. So it's going to be one of the best matchups. What do you have to say about it?
I completely agree with all of that. I'm really excited for it. There's no better way to start the season than the highest scoring game of the week. Like, we're all excited to get back, and this is a monster matchup. We've got so many weapons on both sides that I'm really, really excited for it. And all the things you were saying, those studs on the Lions, and who we're trying to find out is actually going to start making an impact for the Chiefs. I'm looking forward to seeing that. And, historically with the Chiefs, you don't really have a top receiver. It's always Kelsey and Mahomes, and it'll be interesting to see if he's out, what they do, or even if he's playing, who else gets involved, because, they do have some question marks at receiver and running back, but they're going to produce because they've got Patrick Mahomes. So I'm really excited to see the Lions. I have a lot of Lions on my fantasy teams. I don't have any Chiefs players on my fantasy teams, but I'm loaded with Lions. So I'm really looking forward to start the season with this game.
I do have something else to input. Historically, Chiefs did have a amazing receiver, Tyreek Hill. I don't know if you remember this guy, the Cheetah.
Well, I'm talking about
He's
since
one
he
of the
left.
best. Well,
Outside of
since he left,
Tyreek,
yeah.
outside of Tyreek,
Yeah,
they're kind of just throwing it everywhere. So
yeah, because I was gonna say historically, Kelsey and Tyreek Hill were like two of the top scoring fantasy players
yeah.
in the and like the league. So yeah, but yeah, now they're just a crapshoot. Take your choice, freaking spin the slots and see what comes
Yeah.
out. I definitely agree on that.
And that could be frustrating during those bye weeks when you're really desperate for a receiver and you're like, yeah, well, he's got Mahomes throwing to him, but it doesn't always work out, as we've all
Yes,
been
sir.
through before.
Absolutely.
So regarding the actual players on the Lions, I just want to go over a few things, which you are aware of this already, but I've got Amon-Ra St. Brown in 2 leagues, David Montgomery in 2 leagues. I would have him in 3, but you got him that one league ahead of me. But I got Jahmyr
Both
Gibbs
leagues.
ahead of you in both leagues. So I got Jahmyr Gibbs in 3 leagues, Amon-Ra in 2, and David Montgomery in 2. And I'm actually pretty high on Jared Goff as just, a fill-in quarterback, a few weeks here and there. For a matchup like this, I'd have no problem playing Jared Goff. And there is a sleeper on the Lions that I'm going to discuss later.
All right, Joe, who do you have for your hot matchup of the week here?
Well, I'm going with the Steelers and the 49ers. And on paper, these are the 2 top defenses in the league. But on paper, at the beginning of the season, it never really seems to work out that way. I hope it does because I'm a Steelers fan. And, Steelers and Niners are always a respectable D. And, there's a few other teams that are always going to be hovering towards the top. But right now, on paper, those are the top 2. So, it'll be an interesting game because of that. But the thing is, their rush defense on both sides is really good. But the secondary on both sides is questionable. We're going to see a lot of weapons on both sides. So that secondary will be tested. The 49ers secondary and the Steelers secondary will be tested. The Steelers secondary has been weak for quite a few years. The 49ers, I don't know. They're kind of a mid-range secondary, but preseason they looked pretty bad. And Nick Bosa just signed a huge deal to become the highest paid defensive player ever. And TJ Watt is back for the Steelers. So, again, I'm excited to see both defenses play. But when you think about all the weapons that we have on both sides, that's going to be a fun game to watch. We've got CMC, obviously, Debo, which, Debo is not going to be the same player he was because he had 3 rushing touchdowns last year. It's probably not going to happen this year with CMC in the mix for the entire season. Got Brandon Ayuk that had a pretty respectable season last year. And then, Brock Purdy, I think, the last, let me see, I think it was like the last 6 games of the season, whenever he started in week 13, I believe. And from week 13 to 18, he had 2 scores in every game. And then the last game he had 3. So he had, 2 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns, then 3 touchdowns. And he's looking like pretty solid, and he's going to be the starter. And it's cool to see Kenny Pickett as a starter for the Steelers because that was a rough year last year, but he was a rookie. Got to give him some slack. And now if he's getting more comfortable with his receivers, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, those guys are going to be right there for him. And then also he can dish it off to Najee if he needs to. So we got a lot of good weapons on both sides of the field. And Jalen Warren's another one that will be getting a little bit more action. And, he did well last year. He might get a little bit more this year. But either way, I think you've got some good running backs on both sides, good receivers on both sides, and it'll be a really fun game to watch, even if the defense is playing awesome on both sides too.
Roger that. Yeah, and some things that as well. Purdy definitely was on a hot streak. But I know you said his last game he had 3 touchdowns. I remember the Eagles holding him to 0 touchdowns on his last game of the season. So
I might have been talking about the regular season.
No, I'm just kidding. That didn't matter for fantasy. Yeah, that was just regular playoffs.
Yeah,
That's just a little shout out you 49ers fans that want us Eagles back. I just got to stir the pot a little bit. You guys ain't ready for that. You're coming back to Philly. You're going to be crying again. Trust me. But that is one of my favorite matchups too. I love that 49ers Steelers. A lot of it's going to be a lot of big explosive plays because you're right. Pass rush is great, but the secondary is trash. So that means not trash, but like mid range. But that means that there's going to be a lot of.
We'll see. It might be trash.
There's going to be a lot of big plays. Yeah, I think it's going to be a good game for sure. I have CMC in 2 out of 3 leagues. I couldn't get him in the third one because I had a 12 pick. Obviously, he didn't fall that far, but I definitely think that he's going to be effective. George Kittle's going to be effective. Purdy's back. I think he's going to manage the game. But on the other side, obviously, there's going to be some Steelers that get some good touches for sure. So I agree on that.
Yeah, and Brock Purdy in those last weeks, those last 6 weeks, was averaging over 20 points a game. So if you need to plug him in, he's available in a lot of leagues. If you need to plug him in, that's a great play. Risky maybe for a Thursday night game, first game of the season, but if I didn't have a quarterback I was real confident in, he finished strong last year, I'd plug him in. And one thing I want to mention, I know you have McCaffrey in 2 leagues, and I actually thought about sending you a trade today. And I was very concerned. So I ultimately pulled back, but I actually polled online and I asked in this fantasy chat I'm in, which would you rather have? Which side of this trade would you rather have? And this is what I was going to send to you. There's Justin Jefferson and Jahmyr Gibbs for Amon-Ra St. Brown and CMC. And the poll came back 7-7, completely split down the middle because, that's a combo. I mean, obviously, both sides of that trade are going to win. They're great to have on either team. I just want CMC on one team so bad, and I don't have him on any. So I thought about
Well,
making
I
that
mean,
offer to you. And I know you like
that's a
Jahmyr
solid
Gibbs.
trade. But I think in those in that league you're looking at CMC as well. I'm not really too loaded with running backs. Maybe I am. I don't recall, but I think that's the one where I have only a few. But yeah, no, I hear you. You want to have CMC. Is going to be a workhorse this year. Everybody, like, I'm going up against him first week in my
Oh, yeah.
Champions League. So
Cheering for both sides.
so it's going to be good.
Yeah, he's just a fun player to have on your team.
Yes, he is. All right, welcome back. Now we're going to talk about who's not hot this week. What are some matchups that you want to avoid this week, Joe?
Well, this matchup that I want to avoid is kind of strange because I have so many players from the Saints, but the Titans versus the Saints. That's my stay away game. The Saints have a strong defense. This seems like one of these games that's going to be a grind, back and forth, low scoring grind. The Titans are going to be gorging Derrick Henry with carries as always, and I'm excited to see DeAndre Hopkins too. But there's been a lot of movement on both teams. You got Tannehill's now throwing to DeAndre, and this is their first time on a team together. They're both vets, yes, but it might take them a few games to get warmed up and start meshing. And on the Saints side, you got Derek Carr, new team, and Jamal Williams filling in for Kamara because Kamara is suspended. So there's just a lot of moving pieces. And for the first game of the season, even though most of these guys are vets, I would just stay away from it because I feel like it's going to be a low-scoring game. It's going to be a grind, and you've got both teams with new players on each side. And for me, I'd rather just see them produce before I start putting them in. With that said, I am playing Jamal Williams in a few leagues at flex. I think he's a good sneaky flex play. Juwan Johnson could be a good play if you need a tight end. They say they're going to get him more involved in the passing game. But, the automatic starts are Derrick Henry and DeAndre Hopkins. If you drafted Hopkins, you're going to play him. But overall, I think it's going to be a low-scoring grind.
Gotcha. Yeah. I do see that game there. I actually see it a little bit differently. I kind of see it as like more of a, it's going to be like no defensive type of game. I feel like those guys are going to really just, it's going to be ugly and it's going to be sloppy because it's the first game of the season, but you're going to still see minimal defense, right? So there's going to be some blunders, some errors, but you're also going to see some big plays, I think. And Derek Carr, I think is going to light the team on fire because he loves shoving the ball to one receiver. Olave is going to be that guy. Who knows what Michael Thomas is going to do? I'm not high on Michael Thomas, but I am really big on the Saints backfield. So obviously Jamal Williams, definitely a great play, blow up game. That guy's going to, he's taking all the carries. He's going to give you that 20. He's going to give you that Jamal Williams from last year, right? This game. So that's going to be a nice workload.
He might have two goal line carries and hit them both.
And I think they're going to do that because Derrick Henry, of course, we all know he's going to be getting those, he's probably going to have a 200-yard rushing game with like 2 touchdowns. So they're just going to feed each other, grind each other out, just smash each other in the mouth and kind of figure themselves out on offense where they're going to be. So, I wouldn't say it's the worst game. I'd say more of a mid-tier game, but I do definitely see some good plays there for sure.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Olave is going to be catching a lot of balls from Derek Carr. And I hope you're right, just because, like I said, I'm playing Jamal Williams in 3 leagues. So I really hope you're right about that. And I got Derrick Henry and I got DeAndre in a league too. So I would love for that to be a little high scoring, but I just feel like like I said, with the moving pieces and some questionable teams, like as a whole, I want to see both of those teams start playing before I trust them. But yeah, we'll see. First game of the year can be sloppy for any team. So doesn't mean it'll be low scoring, but it might be sloppy, like you said. Welcome back, Armchair Addicts. Manny, who's your cold call of the week?
All right, I thought you'd never ask. So my cold call of the week is the Panthers versus the Falcons game. Man, it's the garbage bowl, the toilet bowl. Who's the crappier team? And I think at the end of the day, it's a toss up, right? So I know there's some studs or a stud on each team playing. I wouldn't say there's a lot of I absolutely invested nothing into these two teams in all my leagues because I just Bijan is going a little bit too high for me ADP, but I think he's the only one worth playing that matchup. Right, is gonna be his welcome to the NFL game. He's going against and the Panthers aren't a soft defense. They just got injured last year, so it's gonna be a little bit of a testament. Right, he's gonna get pounded a little bit. He might have some big plays. Overall, I think it'll be a solid 20-point outing for him. On the other side, for Panthers, the only person I think will have anything, more than 10, 15 points would be Adam Thielen if he plays. I just think it's just going to be a very low scoring affair. Obviously, I don't even know what the spread is for Vegas, but it's definitely one of the lowest scoring projected games of the week. And I mean, in one of the worst divisions in the league. Like I have a good friend that's a Bucks fan, and he's telling me he's super biased. He's telling me all about the Bucks. I'm like, bro, let me just tell you, Saints are the best team in that division, and it ain't pretty. So I do not want any. If you're drafting and you get Bijan and you're like my other buddy that grabbed Bijan over Saquon Barkley or Nick Chubb, you need to slap yourself because that's stupid. And don't bet on a rookie like that.
Yeah, I passed up Bijan for that very reason. I mean, I think he's going to be a stud. Don't get me wrong, but when you've got options like Nick Chubb and Saquon Barkley, I have Saquon in 2 leagues, and passed up Bijan for him without hesitation.
Yeah, even Josh Jacobs. I mean, I would take Josh Jacobs and Jahmyr Gibbs before I would take Bijan because I feel like he has a good floor, but his ceiling is just so limited. I just don't think that they're going to take their rookie and run him to the ground when they had Tyler Algier, who was one of the most efficient running backs in the league last year when he took over. I mean, that guy wasn't no slouch. I mean, he was a 4th-round pick, and he came in. He was averaging like 4.5 yards a carry, so he was killing it. He just, somebody better got put on the team.
That's it. Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Now we're going to talk about some of our draft observations and breakdowns. Right, we talk a little bit about what we saw, what we experienced, and talk a little bit about our teams here and our favorite picks. So, Joe, you want to lead us off over here and give us a little bit, a couple minutes of, what you saw in your drafts. And keep in mind, people, this is a 12-man PPR league we play in. That's all I do. We're redraft PPR guys. Anybody can do a 8 to 10-man league. Those are stacked rosters. But when you get 12-man or more, you're really starting to get into that deep, sleeper territory. So lead us off, Joe, and let us know what you think about that.
Well, as I told you in our first episode, I do lean heavily on running back. And I did follow suit as much as I could with the majority of my drafts. I had one league where I actually went running back for my first 3 picks. And that's the team I'm happiest with. And part of that is also because I'm putting a lot of stock in those mid-round wide receivers that could have a huge ceiling. The Jahan Dotsons, people that maybe, had like an average year last year and have the potential for a breakout this year. And, DeAndre Hopkins was another one that was kind of floating around in round 4 and you could just scoop him up. But for the most part, I went heavy running back because I feel like after those handful of studs are gone, you're going to be scraping the bottom of the barrel to find two running backs to start with confidence. So I did notice that work out for me, doing the hero running back approach, just drafting two in a row. With that said, I did also have a few times where, in your league, I went Justin Jefferson because I had first pick. I did think about going with McCaffrey, but I couldn't pass up Justin Jefferson. So there's obviously exceptions to every rule, but for the most part, I leaned heavily on running back, and it paid off. In my opinion, it paid off big time in most of my drafts. What about you? What
Nice.
did you notice most in your drafts, or what kind of trends were you following?
Yeah, so obviously, I noticed, I had a different strategy for pretty much everything that happened. So if I picked late, I know I had to go, balanced on my approach. I had to go running back, wide receiver, first 4 rounds, 2 and 2 of each, because I felt like I was getting the best value that way. If I was picking early, I could go, stud running back. If or depending on what pick I am, it's either stud running back or wide receiver, depending on, where I'm picking in the top five. So I happen to get lucky and get, just excuse me, get Christian McCaffrey in 2 leagues, and when you pass on him, that allowed me to get him because even though I was a fifth pick, everybody else grabbed whatever else came out after him. So that worked out great to my approach. And those are my favorite teams because I ended up going, running back, wide receiver, first 2 picks. And then I ended up getting tier 1 QB on the 3rd round. So I either got Josh Allen or I got Jalen Hurts. And then obviously the league that I got Jalen Hurts, I also have managed to snag AJ Brown with my 2nd round pick. So I got a nice little AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts stack. Otherwise, most of the leagues I saw, Mark Andrews was falling to the 4th round. And I think he was typically mocked, and everyone had him going in the 3rd round. Early offseason, he was a 2nd rounder, but 3rd round was kind of where he settled off in. And I got him 4th because it was obviously a luxury pick, and I was like, man, I can't pass this up. But I did realize that I could have possibly went stronger on the running backs. You're right. The drop off for running backs this year. I mean, I think there was less workhorse running backs that there's ever been. Most of the guys that you see after the 5th round are pretty much committee backs, and there's some good ones. But I ended up taking the approach of, man, there's no running back. So instead of trying to force a running back pick, I went with the best available pick. So I was going, got a QB in the 5th in one league, or I got like a couple stud receivers, 3rd and 4th, right? I got some guys I really liked. And then I went and did running back stacks. So I did like Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson in one league, and the the 7th and 8th. And then another league that I was short running backs, I did Kamara and Jamal Williams. I did them in the 3rd and the 7th or 8th. So there are some stacks there that you could get late if you happen to screw something up or not. It just doesn't fall your way sometimes, and that's just kind of how it is. So obviously, if you get early pick, your team's going to look better initially on paper. But getting late picks isn't bad either, because if you're going more balanced, your team's going to be, instead of being top heavy, you got a little bit more fluidity with your team when it comes to waiver wire ads and all that.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that because I had first pick in 2 leagues, and then the other leagues I was at the back end of the draft. I had like 8th, 9th, 10th in 2 leagues. So my approach did change a little bit when I had first pick. So the 2 leagues where I had first pick, I went Justin Jefferson with both. And then on the way back, I got a running back, and then Jalen Hurts for both of those leagues. So, Jalen Hurts and Justin Jefferson and a solid running back. It's a different approach, but it was because I had first pick. When I was towards the end, that's when I was going running back. Even though it wasn't keeping it balanced, I felt like I was going to get those guys, the mid-range, Jahan Dotsons, the George Pickens, that were still hanging around, that I felt very confident in, that would have a big ceiling or at least enough volume where you'd feel confident starting them every week, and you'd still have 2 studs at running back. So my strategy changed drastically depending on my location.
All right, ladies and germs, welcome back. Now it is time for your favorite segment, the Big Balls Call of the Week. All right, Joe, who has the biggest balls of this week? Tell me.
Well, my big balls call of the week is Sam Laporta scores a touchdown in his rookie debut. Now, we talked about earlier, it's going to be a high-scoring game. And Jared Goff, as great as the Lions are offensively, Jared Goff does have limited receiving options. So outside of Amon-Ra St. Brown, where's he go? I've heard he has a great rapport with Laporta already. So I think he's going to pass a touchdown to him. Well, again, it's my big balls call of the week. So I'm not very confident, but I'm saying it's definitely possible that Sam Laporta scores a touchdown in his rookie debut in the NFL.
All right.
What about you? Tell me
it.
about your big balls call of the week.
Well, my big old cojones for this week are going to be your boy from your team, the Steelers, Mr. George Pickens. Vegas has this guy for the yard spread is 42 yards. They have him at 3.5 receptions for this game. They honestly think that San Fran has a good secondary, and I think that that's the only way that either of these teams are going to move the ball is through the air or through those wide receiver screens or running back toss-offs, just because both their defensive lines are so good. So my big balls call is that George Pickens is going to double all his projections. He's going to have 100 receiving yards. He's going to have a touchdown, right? Maybe 2. And then he's definitely going to have, he's going to be a workhorse, get 7 to 8 receptions. Like you're going to see the George Pickens you saw in training camp this week. So, and that's going against a team that apparently is expected to be, he's apparently expected to be shut down. So that's why I think that he's going to exceed that. And plus his fantasy projection is 10.9 points per game, or 10.9 points for this game in a PPR league with bonus scoring. So that tells you that he's like projecting, anywhere from 8 to 11 points, which isn't much at all.
No, I think that's very attainable, and I really hope you're right. And he just smashes him in the mouth and gets 100 yards and a score. That would be amazing. It would make me happy, regardless of fantasy football.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's always good when you have players on your team that, you're actually a fan of, or that you steal from a co-host. That's always going to make good watching here. Folks, speaking of draft, let me tell you something about Birdman over here. This man, you guys see his player profile for Christian Kirk. And he had an opportunity to grab his boy Christian Kirk in the 5th round. And guess who he grabbed? My player profile, George Pickens. He left Kirk on the sidelines, boys and girls. So you need to watch out for this guy, all right? He's a shark.
I did pick up Kirk in 1 or 2 leagues, and I picked up Mike Evans in 1 league over Pickens. But you got the wheels turning, and I saw Pickens there, and I snatched him before you could.
That's one of our most. I think that's one of our most popular videos too. That one and the Jahan Dotson one. It seems like a lot of people are on that hype train, man. They're researching these guys and really getting on there. And I don't know if you noticed that guy, whatever his name is, the guy you don't like from ESPN, all of a sudden has this cameo on how David Montgomery is like this go-to guy now. I'm like, bro, did he see my player profile? Because he's talking about the same points I made.
You've been saying it for 2 months too, so.
And here we are, just another fantasy football show. It said we got the biggest balls. So tune in next week, folks. Thank you for joining us here today. It's your boy MJG and Birdman. I hope you all have a great rest of your evening.
Peace.
Go Birds.